Welcome to Will's Box Song Pod, a show where we dig deep into the songs and artists that move us and how we're moved to craft the songs we write. I'm Tim Wilsbach, and I write, release, and perform music as Wilsbach, and you can find me anywhere you stream music. Let's dig in. Originally from New York and following in the footsteps of rock and roll royalty like Bruce Springsteen or the band, my guest today released his debut solo album, Next Stop, Bedford Avenue, in 2003, toured the US, Canada, and Europe, opening for acts like Norah Jones, Steve Earle, Ray LaMontagne, Cheap Trick. Early in his career, he worked as an engineer's assistant at the legendary Hit Factory. That eventually led him to a mentor-mentee relationship with people like Tommy LiPuma, who would guide him to become the director of college marketing of a label. That experience sent him into a career in marketing that would largely sidetrack the music career for most of the 2010s. He officially returned to music with the 2023 release of the album Bazar with his band 9 Mile Station. Please welcome to Will's Box Song Pod, Will Hawkins. How you doing, buddy?
Man. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So I did just a little internet dive on you. Did I get all that right, or did I miss the mark?
You did get a lot of that
all
right. Yeah, that's
nice.
Terrific. I didn't realize there was that much information about me out there.
So you're kind of like me. Like I had a big my identity back in 90s, early 2000s was music with this TV thing that you also did on the side. And then 2008, 2009, that kind of time, like I kind of put the music away a little bit and really kind of dove in and focused on the TV career, and then came back to the music like 2019, like more full time. I just never put it away. I don't think you're probably like me. You can't actually ever put it away, but is that the same kind of thing that you did, or?
It was similar. Yeah. When I first got out of school, I was playing in bands in New York City, and I happened to get a job at Hit Factory, which led to a job at the time, GRP Records, and that was Impulse Records, and that was Verve. So I was working with a lot of really big jazz names in the studio, and it was really intimidating to be in the studio with people like the Brecker Brothers or George Benson or Diana Krall and see like just their musicianship and professionalism, and then go back and listen to my demo. That was nowhere near what they were doing, but at the time, I didn't give myself like a break. Like they had been doing this for decades. And here I was, a 20-something-year-old kid trying to like put a rock band together. But I worked at labels for about 10 years. I left the audio engineering part and became more marketing, and then A&R and radio. And I kind of got to see how the sausage got made on the other side.
Right.
And then I was working for Capitol Records towards the end of the 90s. And I was working with Gary Gersh was the CEO at the time, and Glenn Ballard had a label that I worked with. And when Gary got fired, how it works at studios and labels, when the big guy gets fired, everyone who he brings in gets fired too. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. We all got let go. And I didn't have much of a career, so I didn't have anything to fall back on. So I ended up back in New York, and I started working for Fox Sports. And I was doing integrated marketing there and doing more what became like event marketing, experiential marketing. And I had a career, I still have a career as an event producer. So I had put out an album in 2003 and 2007, and they did okay. Like the reviews were good. And at the time you were selling actual physical CDs.
Right.
So I made some money, but certainly wasn't making the kind of money that I could raise a family on. And around that time, I was doing a lot of freelance work, and an agency I was with offered me a full-time job for some like real adult money. And I was like, well, all right, well, let's try being able to pay your rent for a little while. And I had some success in that. I really enjoyed the work, and I didn't make a whole lot of music during that 10-year period. My creative juices were flowing as like a creative director and coming up with ideas for marketing campaigns. And music was kind of like an ex-wife that I didn't want anything to do with, because it triggered so much like frustration and pain that I was happy not making music for a while. And I was actually enjoying going to see music and listen to music, but I didn't really miss making music for a while. I started inching back into it around 2016, 2015. And then my mom had a stroke in 2017. I went back to New York to take care of her. And after she passed away later that year, I found myself in a really, really dark place. The grief was just seemed insurmountable at the time. And I had just sold an agency that I had built. So I was out of work. I wasn't doing very much except just, I couldn't leave the house. And one day I just had this epiphany that, my mom wouldn't have wanted me, she wouldn't want to see me so sad. She wouldn't want to see me in such a dark place. But so I was like, well, what do you think? What kind of advice would she give me right now? Which would be, what makes you happy? Do something that makes you happy. And music always made me happy. And she was always a big supporter of me as a musician. So I just started like banging out writing songs. First, I hadn't written anything in like 7 or 8 years. Hadn't even tried. And the songs that I was writing were not sad songs. You think you might be writing sad songs when you're in a sad place, but I didn't need more sadness. I didn't need to dig a hole deeper of how I was feeling. So the songs I was writing was more like, there's something better down the road. Things are going to be okay. More optimistic things, almost maybe even just telling myself that things were going to be all right. And I started doing those songs out at open mics and, little songwriter showcases. And ultimately that created a band. I found people that were really digging the music, which led me to Fernando Perdomo, who's in a movie called Echo in the Canyon that celebrates the music of the Los Angeles canyons. And we put a band together called 9 Mile Station. And we worked with Al Schmidt, who is an old mentor of mine. Al won 26 Grammys in his lifetime. He worked for everybody from Paul McCartney to Bob Dylan, Barbra Streisand, Elvis Presley. I mean, you name it, the guy worked with it. And then Nico Bolas worked on it too. And Nico won Grammys with Melissa Etheridge and Shelby Lynn. And he also worked with Toto. And the two of them really elevated the work that we were doing. And it really opened me up again. And then during the lockdown, I didn't have anything to do. Events were closed. The business was closed. So I spent my days in the recording studio. So I came out of the pandemic of 18 months worth of songs recorded. And it was the first time in my life I was really able to be that artist without having to be anything else. I didn't have a side job. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any other responsibilities. Everything was shut down. So it was the first time that I was able really just to be the artist that I always wanted to be. Yeah. And that led me out to where I am now, where I'm writing more. Like I have a solo record that's coming out, hopefully in the fall. I'm working on it now with Fernando and Ted Russell Camp. And I came out of the COVID a different person, really and music saved me in a lot of ways. And the people that I started spending time with, friends, were all musicians again. So this message that my mom gave me, which is be happy, go make music, completely changed my life.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be right now without it. It's just, it's all encompassing at this point. Like music is every day.
Those first few songs that you wrote after your mom passed is kind of those became what Bazar ended up being?
The first song that I kind of finished was Caught in the Rain.
Okay.
I woke up one morning and I just started playing the chords and the song just came out of nowhere, but it started out as, do you know what a murder ballad is?
No, I think I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I know what that is.
So back in the 20s, there were like a murder ballad is almost like a rap song of the 20s, where these gory songs of like revenge of people doing, like a lover doing you wrong.
Uh-huh.
So I had an old fiance that that left me for her boss. And the night that I found out that she was leaving, it was a big snowstorm in New York. And the song started out, we got caught in the snow, and that just it just didn't work. So I just changed it to the rain. And at first it was a real like vengeful song. And it was funny to me. And I'd play it for people and they were more shocked than funny. But it was catchy. So I kind of rewrote the song and it became, I got caught in the rain, but it's about someone who's cheating on you and getting caught. And their alibi is, I can't get home. Where are you? Where are you? You should be here. Like, well, I can't get there. It's raining. I can't, it's a big storm. I can't get to you.
Yeah.
And in the original version, the guy in the song kills his girlfriend And then when the police come back around and say, hey man, where were you? He goes, I don't know, man. I got caught in the rain. I wasn't home. So like the song kind of circled back, but that kind of like, but it was fun. It made writing fun again, and it was catchy.
I got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home to you. Well, I know it ain't fair. No, it ain't right. He works hard all day and she stays out all night. Yeah, that other shoe is gonna drop, and when it does, there's gonna be a fight.
You mentioned it's a catchy song. It's super catchy. That hook is kind of undeniable. Do you go to a song with that in mind? Do you kind of start with the hook sometimes? You start with the lyric? Like, what's the balance there?
I don't know. Sometimes it's different each time. I'll give you an example. Post Malone, Sunflowers from the Spider-Man soundtrack.
Yeah.
It has that long intro, but I was singing along to it, and I came up with an alternative melody to that.
Okay.
And then I started arranging the new song over some of what Post Malone did, and it's a song called Can I Drive You Home? And I was with somebody at a cowboy bar, and she's a big two-stepper. And when we get there, she goes, look, I need you to know that I come here alone and I dance with everybody. We come here to do two-steps. So there's going to be cowboys that come up and ask me to dance. I hope it doesn't bother you. I'm like, I don't care. Go ahead. As long as I don't have to do it. So sure enough, like cowboys of all ages came up and she went in two steps. She came back, and I could see in some of the cowboys' eyes that, they were hoping that this meant more.
Right.
So the song was like, you can dance with all these cosplay cowboys all you want. I know I'm leaving with you.
Yeah.
So me listening to Post Malone ended up becoming more of an Americana country song. And what started out as like synthesizers over a synth bass got translated into this completely other song. I think it's just having the antennas out.
Yeah.
And listening. When I lived in New York City, I used to spend time in this dive bar in Hell's Kitchen, and Lanford Wilson, who's a famous playwright, used to hang out there. He used to keep a little micro tape recorder in his pocket, and he would instigate conversations to draw out certain kind of things that he could then use for dialogue for his plays.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone just says something off the cuff, and you're like, wow, that would be a great song. You know? So it's seeing the world through this filter of listening to what people say, and then using that again as a mirror to hold back to the world and give them back what they've said. So my songwriting has changed a lot over the years. It happens less with me just playing chords on the guitar and saying, what kind of song would this be? And now it's more intentional. Like I go into writing a song with an intent to writing a story.
And it sounds like you're starting more from lyric than music.
So it's changed, and it's a lot more. I find it more fun.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah. It's like putting a puzzle together. I don't know what your writing is like, but for me, it's like, it can be a spell. I kind of, all of a sudden I find the character that I'm writing about, and then I'm walking in the shoes of that character, and I can speak for that character.
Right.
I stopped writing like breakup songs, and I'm now trying to write songs that tell more stories about other people's experiences. I'm a big fan of John Steinbeck, for instance, and Charles Bukowski, and film. I love Martin Scorsese, and I find songwriting very cinematic because I'm really writing what I see. I close my eyes and I see this movie, and I'm writing the screenplay of this movie I see in my head. And I'm starting to write more about other people's experiences. There's a song on the album called Who You Love, and it was written for my niece, Jessica, who married her partner, and she lives in Central Florida, and she's been battling to love who she wants to love her whole life, whether it be my brother or her people at school, like coming down because she's gay. It's, I have so many friends that are battling just to be given what is normal for everybody else.
Yeah.
And so that song's kind of like an anthem, just being like, look, you can't tell me what I can do, who I can love. I'm going to love who I want to love. And I mean, it's not groundbreaking, but it's like, that's what I'm trying to write more now.
Who you love is like a heartbeat that just drives you every day. Who you love is all the air you breathe and the pill you always take. Who you love is like that precious stone you wear around your neck. Who you love is like that anchor thrown in a safe harbor by the bay. It's who you love.
I have another song called Streetlights on Avenue B, and it's about a friend of mine who I knew in New York 25 years ago. And when I moved to LA, I ran into her again. And when I first knew her, she was a drag queen in an after hours club in the East Village in a place called Robots. And now she's like done full SRS surgery and living her life as a woman. And I told that story. And I have a new song called Broken Taillight, which comes from the purview of a bad cop doing a bad traffic stop. And we all know how it's going to end. But like with each verse, it just goes further down the rabbit hole. Like
Right.
I've really started to try to write more songs that are more like holding a mirror up to the world than about my specific experiences.
Yeah, it reminds me of, like, are you a John Prine fan at all?
I'm a big John Prine fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it reminds me of kind of that.
Yeah,
whole
and John
deal.
would able to do that in a sense, even the way Steinbeck did it, with like a little smirk, a needle, and like just like he was able to do that in a way that made you think. I wish I'm a little bit more blunt than those two writers, but that's the experience comes from that.
Yeah, I mean, blunt, or simplicity too is
Yeah.
also maybe another way to say that. And you find that people can kind of latch onto a song a little bit easier if it's just more plain.
Yeah, and I think with Americana, for me, the difference, I consider myself an Americana artist, and I'm proud to be an Americana artist. Americana is never country, but country can be Americana.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, 20 years ago, you might call what you do alt country.
What I love about being a part of the Americana scene is it's writing about everyday stuff.
Right.
It's not the sheen, glossy kind of vision, and it's certainly not about pickup trucks
Yeah.
and someone scratching your car door thing. That's fine. Those songs are fine, but I just think Americana is a more serious songwriting.
Yeah, it's almost like those two genres there's like sonically, production wise, there's so much overlap there, but it almost boils down to the lyrical content. How you present the songs in that way that kind of defines.
Like when you look at somebody like Neil Young and Crazy Horse or Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, that's Americana. There's elements of blues, there's elements of rock, there's elements of soul.
You mentioned kind of a lot of people that you share a similar sound with, but who are you listening to that's really kind of giving you inspiration, especially earlier in your career? Who's on your turntable that's making you want to strap a guitar on and start writing a song?
The Replacements and REM, the Pretenders, Violent Femmes. I mean, we're talking a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
The 70s Stones was like big influence for me. The Beatles were influential to me when I was younger, but the Stones ended up being, I think if I had to be really fair about it, I think the Stones developed more of my sound than the Beatles did.
Uh-huh.
But the way Paul and John and George would like craft their melodies, I mean, that's inescapable. We grew up during that time. It's hard not to have that be an influence. And I love the Beatles, but if I had to be really honest, I think the Stones probably were a little bit more influential to the sound that I try to make.
Yeah.
I go out and I see a lot of live music, and there are people that really inspire me. Like I went to go see Johnny Marfa and the Lights last night at the Grand Ole Echo, and he's kind of the best of Dwight Yoakam and Chris Isaak.
Okay.
It's rock and roll in a sense that he's a big personality up there and he has a lot of fun. The band has a lot of fun. The audience has a lot of fun. And there's some country in that too, but it's more rock and roll. Silas Ness also played last night. It's interesting. I was talking to a violinist that I play with named Aubrey Richmond, and we were having a conversation at the bar while Silas was playing, and I stopped and I wrote a note on my phone because I misheard one of his lyrics. But the way I misheard it inspired me. I'm like, well, what I just thought I heard would make a great song.
Yeah.
So I started just typing that down so I wouldn't forget it. And I've already forgotten it, but let's see what I wrote.
Right.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. So I thought I heard him say easy on the eyes, but that's not what he said. But like the chorus, I would just literally just wrote down, you're easy on the eyes, you're easy on me, you're easy to be around. Like, so I'm like, okay, this will become a song.
Yeah.
Like there's
right.
something about just the flow about how do I work on you're easy on the eyes, you're easy on me. Like that to me says like, just even though he didn't say that, that's what I heard.
Right. Exactly.
Life is about taking chances, but it's hard to do that when you don't have the confidence to have the people around you and to have a partner, a group of friends to be like, we got you, go take that chance.
Yeah.
So that I'm already thinking about how do I frame this song?
Yeah.
Who's it about? Like, who's the character that's in it?
Uh-huh.
And what do they want out of it? And who are they talking about? So this is a really good example of how I start writing a song these days. When I was younger, I would just start playing chords and find a structure and then sing nonsense over it and record it, go back, listen to it, see if there was anything there that made any sense, and then write a song to that. It really didn't ever really make much sense other than it being a well-crafted song, but it didn't really have any guts or heart to it.
Uh-huh.
But the way I write songs now is like a little kernel or a little something like this would come. I wrote this song called Santa Ana Winds that's on the Bazar 9 Mile Station record. And it started as a bass line. I was just driving around and I just heard this, I don't know where it came from, but it was just like, dum, bum, 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 dum, 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 boom. And I'm just like, and for months I would sing that in my head. And then all of a sudden it's just like, those Santa Ana winds are taking me down. And then I had that. So I had the bass line, and I had somewhat of a chorus, but the song didn't get written till 4 years later when I was in the studio with Fernando Perdomo. We had just finished recording something for 9 Mile Station. And we had some time. We were just talking. I'm like, you know what, man, I've been trying to write this song. Can you help me? And within 45 minutes, we had the majority of the song written.
Yeah.
And it's just these little ideas that like giving yourself space to fail.
Or just being an antenna, almost open to those little whiffs of ideas that come, whether, like you said, it's a lyric or a bass line or whatever. And then as the craftsman are kind of combining those and putting those together and, massaging it up.
Yeah, and I think it's really important not to be precious about it. It's just, no, this song is this song and it's going to be finished. No, man, they're car parts, and you pull the carburetor out of one car to put it into the other so it can race.
Sometimes they come out fully formed, and other times you're, like you said, you're piecing them together from the junkyard of all these other pieces that you have, right?
Yeah, there's a song, a solo single that I released a couple months ago called "This Is Where You Found Me."
Yeah.
It was someone I was dating and someone I didn't feel that was being very supportive of my choices as being a musician, and at this age, one of the conversations we had was like, "Look, man, this is where you found me." I was just like, I don't know what to tell you, but these are the things that are important to me. And I hung up the phone and I wrote that song in 25 minutes. And it was one of the more vulnerable songs that I wrote because in that moment, I felt like I wasn't being heard. I look at my music career as a small business. It's not a very profitable one, but it doesn't matter. It's still something I'm very passionate about. And if I had opened up an ice cream store or a bar, someone you're dating would bring their friends to support that business. So why aren't you supporting the music the same way that you would support another business? Because sometimes they don't see it that way. Yeah, I'm not the guy who's going to get you the house on, the beach in Malibu. and it's more just an honest assessment of who I was in that moment. And recognizing who I'm not.
Lost in a desert of my own sins. Why do I find myself lonely? Why do I always push away? I'm struggling here to find the right words to say. This is where you found me. Lost in my lonely ways. This is where you found me, but it's not where I want to stay.
Being authentic and letting yourself be vulnerable really is kind of the stuff that I've found that really connects. Those are the songs that connect the most with the audience and people.
It's scary though, especially
for sure
because when you first start putting the songs out, you're playing them to your friends and family around you, and sometimes they're the ones that you're writing about.
Right.
I recently found an old box filled with cassette tapes from the early 2000s, and there was a couple songs I found in there that were done, but I didn't do anything with at the time.
Yeah.
And now I'm listening to them like, that's a really good song. Why didn't I do anything with it? Well, I know why, because it was about someone I was living with.
Yeah.
And if I had released it at that point, the consequences of what the content of that song was, maybe I wasn't ready to face.
Right.
So I didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But there are artists out there that are so brave and courageous. They're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Damn the torpedoes. I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wish that in this case, I wish that I was stronger 25 years ago, because who knows where that song, like, I don't know what that song would have done,
Yeah.
where it would have taken me, but I know that it was really vulnerable, and I avoided it because it was vulnerable.
No, I'm with you. I've done a similar thing. I would write the song, but I would know what it was about, but I'm the only one that knew what it was about. Right. I would, cover it in just this, flowery, artsy sounding lyric or whatever. And I knew what it was about, but nobody else did, because I didn't ever say what it was about. And, and then I wonder, like, why didn't this song connect with anybody else? Well, it's because you weren't authentic. You covered it up too much.
Yeah.
Obviously, you probably know who Dan Wilson is from Semisonic, and
Yeah.
he writes a ton of pop hits now. And I follow his Instagram, and I've heard him say a few times, if you've got a batch of songs and you're wondering what's your next single, the one that makes you the most uncomfortable to listen to, that's the single. And there's a lot of truth in that, because what he's saying is essentially that's clearly the one that's the most vulnerable. People connect to that. They pick up there's something real here, and that's ultimately what connects with the audience is that realness, that vulnerability.
And that's always like a really nice thing when what you write resonates with strangers.
Yeah, exactly. Now for the production of that song, you had can't recall his name, but you had
I had Leland Sklar on bass, who's
Yeah.
James Taylor's bassist, Linda Ronstadt, Phil Collins, Lyle Lovett. I mean, you name it. The guy's played on.
He's done everything.
And Marty Rifkin, who played with Bruce Springsteen, and Lucinda Williams, Glenn Campbell. He played pedal steel.
Yeah, and the pedal steel is highlighted in that song.
Yeah,
yeah.
That was a special thing. I've become friendly with Leland over the years. I met him when I was a kid. My father was James Taylor's bodyguard when I was 13. I met Leland at a show 40 years ago, but neither one of us really remember much of it. But when Al Schmidt died in 2021, Leland and I were both very close to Al, and we were just reminiscing about stories with Al. And he asked me what I was up to, and I was like, well, I've got some new songs I'm writing beyond 9 Mile Station. And I was like, it'd be great if you could play on a song.
Yeah.
And also, as I've gotten older, the audacity that I have. I've started to be able to get access to musicians that I idolized and admired growing up.
Yeah, you talk about that audacity. It's something I tell my son and my both my kids actually all the time. Ask for what you want, right? It's a really simple thing, but it's super important. You're not going to get what you want unless you make your intention known to the universe or the person across from you or whatever it is.
Dude, in advertising, I had a client, and we came upon a price for something, and she's like, "Are you sure is that the price?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Are you sure?" And she was a friend. I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Are you sure is that all you need?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay, I want X amount more." She goes, "Was that so hard?" And I go, "I guess it was."
Right.
And she's like, "I happen to have a bigger budget than what you've asked for."
Yeah.
And she goes, "If you weren't a good friend of mine, I would have just accepted the money that you did. But don't be afraid to ask for it. The worst thing someone can do is say no, and then you pivot." So exactly. I'm getting better at it. I still struggle with it, and sometimes.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's always hard to do, but it's something. It's a lesson as we're both a little older, so we maybe bring some wiseness to the process.
Yeah, I hope when I'm 30, I've understood all this better.
Yeah, me too. Oh, that's funny. Do you remember the first song that you ever wrote?
I found these bound books that I used to use to write my songs in. And I found one that was from 1983.
Wow. Okay.
84.
Yeah.
And so I remember it was a song called Baby Blue Eyes, and it was like probably influenced by Behind Blue Eyes by The Who.
Sure.
But I had written out the chords so I wouldn't forget them. And so it was in this bound, like fake leather bound book. It's kind of wild to go through it again.
Yeah, that excavation, going back through some of those lyrics and just seeing where you were at the time and seeing what made it to a record and what didn't make it to a record it's just an interesting kind of thing.
Even when I listen to old tapes, I still hear, like, I haven't changed that much. You could hear my influences a lot more back then than you can now. I'm sure you can still hear them, but back then, like when you're younger, you're emulating your influences. And then as you get older, that's kind of, you sand the other inflections from somewhere else down and they become yours and you have your own voice. And an A&R guy once said to me, whether you're playing guitar, trumpet, or singing, the voice has to be yours. So when someone does an impression of you, people go, oh, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like when someone does Springsteen, that's Springsteen. When someone does Tom Petty, that's Tom Petty. And I'm convinced that they all spent time defining what they were doing so it was singular.
Yeah, it's almost like shaping a character, right? If you were taking it into a mute movie.
It's a fingerprint.
Acting. Yeah.
It's a fingerprint.
Right.
I've been trying to spend more time thinking about listening to my recorded voice and thinking about what is it that's mine, and then extenuating that. Like you kind of got to blow it up a little bit and to make sure that people hear it.
But it's like performing too. You want to be, 10 times the version of yourself when you're on stage. It's the same. It's the same kind of thing when you're recording, a song. Like you're saying, shaping your voice into. It's still you, but it's you amplified.
It's funny because like the character I play in 9 Mile Station, it's pieces of me. But like what I do when I'm solo and what like the character in 9 Mile Station, like he's a big personality. And I was seeing somebody and we hung out a couple times. We met at a show. And after like 3 or 4 dates, she goes, you're nothing like what you're like on stage. I'm like, thank God for that. She goes, no, I kind of liked him. She goes, you're boring. I was like,
that seems like a thoroughly Hollywood dating story to me. Similarly, I mean, I perform as Wilsbach, which is my last name, but it's a dramatic pause in the middle of it. So yeah, it's the same type of thing. Like I wanted to kind of I want to say hide, but that's not the right word. But I wanted a veil of like little creative license, and I can be a little more authentic in a way. In a very roundabout way, I guess, if I've got this, kind of character that I'm, singing and performing as. It was actually funny. Like you and I met, I'm sure we met at Naboo.
Yeah.
And the first few times I played there, I didn't know anybody. I was new to this part of Los Angeles, and it had been a decade since I'd put a record out. And the first time I went there, everyone was talking to me. Hey, Wills, how are you, Wills? I'm like, oh, right. You guys don't know me as Tim, which is my actual name. So
yeah, I didn't know you as Tim. I was one of those people calling you Wills for the same reason.
Yeah. And it was like, I'm going to roll with this for a minute and just, you call me Wills, you call me Wilsbach, Tim, whatever. I mean, it is my name either way. So it's just a funny little thing, but. You mentioned several songs that you're working on or you've finished. What's the project that you're working on now? Are you doing another 9 Miles record? Are you doing Will Hawkins?
It's
solo project.
Right now I'm working on a solo project. Some of the songs that I have that have been sitting around for a while are a little more nuanced than the 9 Mile Station rock and roll stuff we've been doing. But I've been playing with some great players. Michael Collins on drums, Matt Taku on drums, Ted Russell Camp on bass, Nick Cox on pedal steel, Aubrey, like the great Aubrey Richmond on violin, and then some different guitarists. That's been Fernando and I are still working on 9 Mile Station, but it's intentional not working with Fernando on the new stuff, on my stuff, because I don't want it to just be an extension of what I do with 9 Mile Station. I want to use different colors and different sounds and different vibes. I want these songs to stand on their own.
Gotcha. Well, I know you have somewhere to be, so thank you so much for sitting down with me. This is the second interview that I've done for this series. I'm just starting to get it off the ground. So,
well, you're doing a great job, man. Thank you so much for having me. It means a lot to be here with you.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening to Wilsbach's Song Pod. You've made it this far. Please rate, review, like, love, add, subscribe, do all the things on whatever app it is that you're hearing my voice. That lets the almighty algorithm know that interesting people like you like this show, and will serve it up to other cool and interesting people. Wilsbach's Song Pod is produced by Wilsbach Entertainment, LLC. Mixed, mastered, and edited by me, Tim Wilsbach. See you next time.